Bring her to my room, the mafia boss ordered when he saw the African lady alone in the hall. Zara, an elegant African woman in her late 20s, sits alone on a plush velvet armchair near the lobby's center. Her posture is graceful, but her hands fidget with the strap of her purse. A sleek, black designer watch glints under the chandelier light as she checks it for the 5th time in 10 minutes. The lobby of the Grand Solstice Hotel gleamed under the golden glow of chandeliers, the kind of light that made everything feel both luxurious and unreal. Zara sat alone on a velvet armchair, her posture poised, her hands clutching the strap of her purse just enough to show she was tense, but not enough to look desperate. Around her, guests drifted in and out, their laughter echoing softly, but she barely noticed them. Her eyes kept flicking to the polished clock on the wall. Hours, she thought bitterly. Hours I've waited for someone who doesn't seem to care about my time. The soft clink of glasses, the low hum of conversations, the distant notes of a jazz saxophone. It all blended into a background noise she tried to ignore. But her frustration was visible, quiet but unmistakable. She sighed, straightened her back, and let her gaze wander across the lobby. That's when she noticed him. He was leaning casually against the marble bar, dark hair slicked back, sharp eyes scanning the room with a calculating precision. There was a presence about him, commanding, confident, but subtle. He didn't rush to approach her. He simply observed, like a predator curious about its prey, yet not threatening. Finally, he walked toward her. Each step measured, calm, deliberate. He stopped a few feet away, just close enough to draw her attention without invading her space. "Excuse me," he said, his voice deep and smooth, almost like velvet sliding across glass. "I couldn't help but notice you've been waiting a very long time." Zara looked up at him, startled at first, then wary. He was handsome, dangerously so. But there was something more, something beneath the surface that piqued her curiosity. "My friend," she began, her tone clipped. "She's always late. I didn't expect anything different tonight." He smiled faintly, as if he understood something she didn't even know about herself. "Then perhaps I can offer you something better than waiting," he said. "A drink in the penthouse. Quiet. Comfortable. Away from the clock that seems to be betraying you tonight." Her brows lifted. This was unusual, bold even. But his eyes, the way they held hers, made hesitation harder. Something about him made it feel less like an offer and more like destiny. I don't even know your name," she admitted. "Rafael," he replied, with a soft confidence that made the name sound like a promise. "By the time we're done with that drink, you'll know more about me than you think." Zara hesitated. Part of her wanted to refuse. Part of her, some small, reckless part, wanted to see where this would lead. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and Rafael gestured toward it. "Shall we?" She nodded, rising gracefully, letting herself be drawn into his world for just a few moments. As the doors closed and the elevator ascended, the city lights stretched behind them, reflecting in her wide eyes. For the first time that evening, Zara felt a strange, thrilling pull, a mix of curiosity, caution, and something unnameable. She didn't know it yet, but this encounter, this single decision to step into an unknown world, would change everything. The penthouse awaited, and so did him. The elevator hummed softly as it ascended, the soft glow of overhead lights casting a warm sheen across Zara's features. She pressed a hand to her lap, fingers lightly grazing the edge of her purse, but her eyes never left Rafael. There was something about him, something calm yet commanding, that made her pulse quicken without warning. Rafael leaned against the mirrored wall, arms folded, watching her with an intensity that was almost hypnotic. "You carry yourself like someone who's used to control," he said quietly, "and yet you sit there, waiting for someone who clearly doesn't deserve it." Zara's lips curved into a faint smile, part amusement, part caution. "And what makes you care?" He shrugged, but the movement was deliberate, magnetic. "Because I notice things. Rarely do I see someone like you, patient, graceful, frustrated, yet refusing to lose her composure. It's captivating." She felt a flush rise to her cheeks. She should feel offended, or at least wary, but his words didn't feel like empty flattery. They felt like recognition, like someone had seen her, really seen her, in a way no one else had tonight. The elevator dinged, signaling the penthouse. Rafael pressed the button to open the door, holding it for her with a gentlemanly nod. After you. Stepping out, Zara blinked against the brilliance of the penthouse lights. The room was vast, the floor-to-ceiling windows revealing a sweeping view of the city below. Glass railings reflected the moonlight, and the faint scent of expensive leather and polished wood hung in the air. Rafael poured 2 glasses of champagne, handing one to her with a quiet smile. To unexpected evenings, he said. Zara raised her glass, her fingers brushing against his just enough to send a shiver through her. To unexpected evenings, she echoed, and for a moment, the tension of the lobby, the frustration of waiting, all seemed to melt away. They spoke easily at first, light conversation about the city, the hotel, the kind of things strangers say to pass time. But soon, the layers began to peel back. She told him about her work, her ambitions, her frustrations. He listened, genuinely interested, occasionally asking questions that made her think he remembered every detail. And then, without warning, the conversation turned. "Tell me," Raphael said softly, leaning closer, "when was the last time someone saw you for who you truly are without pretense?" Zara hesitated. She wasn't used to opening up to strangers, but in his presence, the words slipped out almost against her will. "I can't remember," she admitted. "I'm careful. People, they don't really see you. They see what they want to see." He nodded, his dark eyes unreadable yet intense. "I see you. All of you. And I like what I see." A thrill ran through her, part fear, part exhilaration. The air between them seemed to hum, charged with something electric and unspoken. She wanted to step back, to tell herself to leave, but another part of her, a bold, reckless part, wanted to see where this would lead. Raphael raised his glass again. "To nights that change everything," he murmured. Zara met his gaze, feeling the weight of his words, the pull of the unknown, and for the first time that evening, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, something extraordinary was about to begin. The city stretched out below them, a sea of twinkling lights that felt both distant and intimate from the height of Raphael's penthouse. Zara moved slowly through the space, her heels clicking softly on the polished floor. Everywhere she looked, the apartment spoke of power, wealth, and impeccable taste. Art that looked priceless, furniture that seemed sculpted to perfection, and a view that made the skyline feel like it was theirs alone. Raphael watched her with quiet fascination, leaning casually against the kitchen counter. "You notice everything," he said, his voice calm but edged with curiosity. "Most people walk in and just exist here. You see the details. That tells me more about you than any conversation could." Zara stopped by the window, her eyes sweeping over the city lights. "I notice because I have to," she replied softly, almost to herself. "I've learned to read the world, to see what others overlook." He approached her, stopping just behind her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him without him touching her. "And yet," he murmured, "even with all that awareness, you let yourself be seen. By me." She shivered slightly, whether from his words or the nearness of him, she wasn't sure. "Seen?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," Raphael said, leaning slightly closer so that his breath brushed her ear. "Most people hide behind a mask. You carry strength, elegance, and vulnerability. It's rare, Zara." Her heartbeat quickened, a mix of intrigue and hesitation swirling inside her. She wanted to step back, to retreat to safety, but the pull was undeniable. Something in his presence demanded attention, demanded surrender, if only for this night. He gestured toward the lounge. "Sit. Let's forget the world for a moment. Just this night, this city, this view." Zara complied, sitting gracefully on the edge of a low velvet sofa. Raphael poured more champagne, handing her the glass. Their fingers brushed again, a fleeting contact that made her pulse spike. They talked, laughter flowing easily now, teasing, curious, personal. He asked about her dreams, her travels, the little things that made her who she was. She found herself opening up, telling stories she normally kept for herself. He listened, really listened, and responded with insight, humor, and a subtle charm that made her want to linger in his presence longer than she should. At one point, he picked up a book from the coffee table, a leather-bound journal embossed with gold. "Do you write?" he asked. Zara smiled faintly. "Sometimes. It's how I make sense of the world. And myself." He handed it to her, and when their fingers met again, sparks of something electric traveled between them. "I'd like to read it someday," he said, his eyes locking onto hers. "But only if you want me to." A warmth spread through her chest. She wasn't used to people asking for permission before entering her world. "Maybe," she said softly, a playful edge in her tone. "Maybe I'll let you." Rafael leaned back slightly, a satisfied smirk tugging at his lips. "Good. I like a challenge." Zara's laugh was light, unguarded. The tension between them melted, replaced by a growing, thrilling connection. For the first time that evening, she felt not just curiosity or caution, but desire, something electric, undeniable, and dangerously exciting. As the night deepened, their conversation shifted from casual to intimate. They shared secrets, vulnerabilities, little confessions that left them both startled by how easy it was to talk, to trust, to feel drawn. With each passing minute, the line between strangers and something more blurred, until it wasn't clear where one ended and the other began. And then, with a quiet, deliberate motion, Raphael reached out. Not too close, not too fast, just enough to invite her into the orbit of him. Their eyes met, hearts racing, and for a heartbeat, the world outside didn't exist. Zara realized she had crossed an invisible threshold. She didn't know where it would lead, but she knew she didn't want to turn back. The penthouse wasn't just a room anymore. It was a stage for a connection that had begun in a hotel lobby hours ago, but felt as if it had been waiting for this very night to ignite. The penthouse had grown quieter, the city lights stretching endlessly beyond the windows. Zara and Raphael lingered near the balcony, glasses in hand, the champagne between them sparkling like liquid stars. The night had flowed seamlessly. Conversation, laughter, flirtation, but beneath the ease, an undercurrent of something darker began to ripple. Raphael's phone buzzed sharply on the marble counter. He glanced at it, his expression tightening for a fraction of a second. Without a word, he silenced it and set it aside, his jawline hardening ever so slightly. Zara noticed immediately. "Is everything okay?" she asked cautiously. He turned toward her, the tension in his features carefully masked behind a calm, almost teasing smile. "Everything is fine," he said, voice low and steady. But she had seen it, just a flicker of shadow crossing the edges of his control. For a moment, the cityscape outside felt different. The twinkling lights, once warm and inviting, now seemed distant and cold, a reminder that the world Raphael lived in wasn't like hers. And yet, rather than frightening her, it made her heart race in a different way. Curiosity, excitement, and a strange thrill all wrapped together. "Who are you really?" Zara asked, her voice soft, almost daring. Raphael studied her, dark eyes unreadable, then took a slow sip of champagne. "I am someone who exists in a world not many people see," he admitted, carefully choosing his words. "A world of rules, power, and responsibilities you wouldn't believe until you saw them." Zara felt a shiver run down her spine, not from fear, but from the allure of someone so enigmatic. "And yet," she said, "you invited me here anyway." He stepped closer, so close that she could feel the warmth radiating from him, but never crossing a line. "Because you're different," he said. "You're brave in ways most people aren't. And bravery draws me in." She wanted to argue, to tell him she wasn't brave, that she was simply trying to survive life's constant disappointments. But the words never came. Instead, she felt the pull of him, a magnetic force she couldn't resist. Then, without warning, the penthouse door opened slightly, a subtle movement, and Raphael's hand instinctively rested on the small of her back. His gaze flicked to the doorway, assessing, calculating. Zara's pulse quickened, not from fear, but from the knowledge that this man's life held dangers she didn't fully understand, yet he had chosen to share a piece of it with her. "I should tell you, Raphael said, voice low, almost a whisper. There are things about this world that aren't safe. Zara's lips parted, caught between hesitation and intrigue. I don't care, she said softly. Not right now. He studied her for a long moment, as if measuring the weight of her words. Then, as if deciding she was ready, he smiled, dark and knowing. Very well, he said, drawing her closer. Then tonight, forget the shadows. Tonight is ours. For Zara, the thrill wasn't in the safety. It was in the danger, the unknown, the whispered possibility that life could be larger, more intense, more intoxicating than she had ever dared imagine. And standing there, in the glow of the city and the warmth of Raphael's presence, she felt the first spark of a connection that was as irresistible as it was perilous. The night stretched on, each moment weaving intrigue, desire, and uncertainty together into a tapestry that neither of them could ignore. Outside the penthouse, the city carried on unaware. Inside, two strangers had crossed a line, stepping into a world that promised both ecstasy and danger, and a story that had only just begun. The penthouse lights dimmed, leaving only the city skyline glowing through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The music, soft, sensual jazz, seemed to wrap around them, filling the space between laughter and lingering glances. Zara felt the warmth of Raphael's presence like a current, drawing her closer with every subtle movement. She sat on the edge of the sofa, her glass of champagne trembling slightly in her hand, not from nerves, but anticipation. Raphael stood nearby, the golden city lights highlighting the contours of his face, the faintest smirk tugging at his lips. Do you dance? He asked suddenly, his voice low and teasing. Zara blinked. I'm not sure, she admitted, a hint of shyness brushing her words. Then let me show you, he said, offering his hand. Her fingers hesitated for only a moment before slipping into his. The moment contact was made, it felt electric, an invisible thread connecting them, pulling them closer than either had expected. He guided her to the center of the penthouse, where the city lights painted the floor with silver and gold. Their bodies moved tentatively at first, testing the rhythm, sinking to the slow, sultry beat of the music. Raphael's hands were firm yet gentle on her waist, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. Step by step, they fell into a harmony neither had anticipated. Zara's heart raced, not from the dance, but from him. From the way he looked at her, the way he seemed to see every unspoken thought, every secret desire. She felt herself letting go of caution, surrendering to the night, to the pull between them. You should go, she whispered suddenly, pulling slightly back. Raphael's brow lifted, a challenge in his gaze. Or perhaps it's exactly right that we stay. The words sent a shiver down her spine. She wanted to resist, to remind herself of the world outside this room, of the danger hinted at in his life, but she couldn't. There was a gravity in him that pulled her forward, that erased hesitation in a heartbeat. Their dance slowed, bodies pressing closer, faces inches apart. The world outside ceased to exist. The city lights, the jazz, even the penthouse itself, all faded into the background, leaving only the two of them, suspended in a moment that felt infinite. And then, impossibly, he leaned in. His lips brushed hers lightly at first, a whisper of a kiss that sent her heart soaring. She responded instinctively, letting herself be drawn into the warmth, the intensity, the undeniable connection that had been building since the lobby hours ago. When they finally parted, the air between them was charged, alive with tension, laughter, and unspoken promises. Zara rested her forehead against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her. This is dangerous, she murmured. Raphael's lips curved into a dark, knowing smile. So are you. For the first time that night, Zara let herself believe in the thrill of the unknown. Desire, attraction, danger, they all mingled, creating a cocktail more intoxicating than champagne ever could. And as the city sparkled below, they both understood that nothing would ever feel ordinary again. Tonight wasn't just a meeting. Tonight was the beginning of something unstoppable, a night that would linger in memory, a connection that would defy reason, and a story that neither of them could walk away from. The city below had quieted, its lights softening as the night edged toward dawn. On the penthouse balcony, The air was cool and crisp, carrying the faint hum of distant traffic. Zara leaned against the railing, her fingers wrapped around a glass of champagne, watching the reflection of lights shimmer on the glass. Rafael stood beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him, but giving her space to breathe. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence was comfortable, yet electric, charged with everything that had happened since the lobby encounter hours earlier. Finally, Rafael broke it. "You know," he said quietly, voice low and intimate, "I've lived most of my life behind walls." Zara glanced at him, curiosity mixed with concern. "Walls?" "Yes," he said, his eyes distant, as if staring into memories he rarely revisited. "Walls of power, of control, of necessity. People don't see me. They see the role I play, the man I'm expected to be, rarely the one I truly am." Zara's chest tightened. She could feel the weight in his words, the honesty that shimmered through the usual confidence. "And tonight," she said softly, "you're letting me see." Raphael's lips curved into a faint, almost wistful smile. I've been waiting for someone to see me like this. And in some reckless way, you came along, and it felt right." Her heart skipped. It was reckless, dangerous even, but her instincts whispered that this moment was real. She took a deep breath, then offered her own confession. "I'm not perfect," she said. "I've been hurt, overlooked, ignored. I try to keep people at a distance because it's easier than facing disappointment. But tonight, I don't want to hide from you." Raphael turned to face her fully, the city lights reflecting in his dark eyes. "Zara," he said, his voice a mixture of wonder and intensity, "you've walked into my world, into the parts I've kept secret for years, and yet you didn't flinch. That takes courage. That takes heart." She met his gaze, the distance between them shrinking until it felt almost unbearable. "And you," she said softly, "you're different from what I expected. Dangerous, yes, but not cruel. There's something real under the surface." Raphael reached for her hand, intertwining his fingers with hers. The warmth of contact, the gravity of the moment, made every other thought disappear. "You've changed something in me," he admitted. "Something I didn't think anyone could." Zara's lips curved into a small, vulnerable smile. "And you've changed something in me," she whispered. "I don't know how or why, but I feel it." For a long while, they simply stood there, hands linked, hearts beating in sync. The city below seemed distant, insignificant compared to the closeness they shared. In that quiet, suspended moment, both understood that what had begun as a chance encounter had become far more than either had anticipated. The night had revealed more than just attraction. It had revealed trust, vulnerability, and the first threads of something profound. Two strangers, drawn together by fate and curiosity, had found in each other a reflection of courage, desire, and longing. And as dawn's first light kissed the horizon, Zara realized that leaving this penthouse, leaving him, was no longer a choice she wanted to make. The first light of dawn painted the sky in soft shades of pink and gold, spilling over the city like liquid fire. The penthouse, once alive with laughter, music, and the charged energy of the night, now felt quiet, intimate, almost sacred. Zara stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city slowly awaken. Her hair fell softly across her shoulders, and the night's champagne but still lingered, making her feel light, unanchored, alive. Behind her, Raphael leaned casually against the balcony railing, hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on her. For a long moment, neither spoke. Words felt unnecessary. The night had spoken in whispers, glances, and touches far more eloquently than any sentence could. Finally, Raphael's voice broke the silence, low and commanding yet tinged with vulnerability. "Zara, I want you. Not just tonight, not just in fleeting moments. I want you beyond these walls, beyond this city if you'll have me." Zara turned, her eyes locking with his. She could see the honesty, the intensity, the undeniable pull of him, the same pull that had drawn her into his penthouse hours ago. She stepped closer, her hand brushing against his. "Then prove it," she said, her voice firm, yet playful, daring him to take the step he wanted as much as she did. He smiled, dark and knowing, and without another word, he closed the distance between them. Their lips met in a kiss that was no longer tentative, no longer hesitant. It was full of promise, passion, and the thrilling certainty that nothing would ever be the same. For a heartbeat, the world outside ceased to exist. The city lights, the rising sun, the penthouse itself, all faded into the background. There was only this connection, this collision of desire, trust, and curiosity that had started in a hotel lobby and had blossomed into something unstoppable. Zara laughed softly against his chest, the sound light and free, as if she had shed the weight of countless disappointments in that single moment. Raphael's arms wrapped around her, strong and protective, anchoring her to him even as the world waited beyond the glass. "This is the beginning," Raphael whispered. "Not just a night, not just a chance encounter. Something that will change everything." Zara's heart swelled and she nodded, feeling a mixture of fear, exhilaration, and undeniable joy. "Then let's not waste another moment," she said, a smile tugging at her lips. And as the city awoke beneath them, two strangers turned confidence turned lovers stood on the penthouse balcony, knowing that the story they had stumbled into was far from ordinary. It was dangerous. It was thrilling. And above all, it was theirs. A night meant to pass in idle waiting had transformed into a lifetime's beginning. The world outside might never understand what had happened in that penthouse, but for Zara and Raphael, nothing else mattered. Some encounters don't just change the night. They change everything.